Hello there and welcome back to this quiet corner where time slows down and the ancient world opens itself to us without hurry. Tonight we're going to step far back into a world that no longer exists, a world that existed long before humans, long before dinosaurs, long before anything walked on land. We're going beneath the waves, into the prehistoric oceans that once covered our planet, to explore the very first life that ever emerged on Earth. Before we begin, take a moment to settle in. Maybe you're listening late at night with the quiet hum of the world around you. Maybe you're just curious, searching for a calm place to drift while you learn. Either way, let's make this a slow journey, one where you don't need to rush or keep track of the clock, because the story of life in the oceans unfolds over billions of years, a pace so gradual that no single lifetime could ever perceive the change. And yet, here we are, the living result of that long, slow dance between water and time. The first thing to understand about prehistoric oceans is that they were nothing like the oceans we know today. They were warmer in some places, colder in others, with different chemistry, different currents, and entirely different life forms. The water itself was younger, richer in minerals, and for most of Earth's history, completely devoid of oxygen in the depths. It was a world of extremes, but also a world of incredible beauty and strangeness. Let's go back to the very beginning, to time before life existed at all. The Earth formed about 4.5 billion years ago, a violent ball of molten rock constantly bombarded by asteroids and comets. As it cooled, water vapor in the atmosphere condensed and fell as rain that continued for millions of years, filling the ocean basins and creating the first seas. These early oceans were hot, acidic, and rich in dissolved minerals, a primordial soup waiting for something extraordinary to happen. For hundreds of millions of years, the oceans remained lifeless, a vast chemical laboratory where simple organic molecules formed and reformed, combining and recombining in endless variations. Then, around 3.8 billion years ago, something remarkable occurred. In the warm, mineral-rich waters, perhaps around deep-sea hydrothermal vents or in shallow tidal pools, the first self-replicating molecules emerged. These were not cells as we know them, but simple strands of genetic material that could make copies of themselves, the ancestors of all life that would ever follow. The first true life forms were microscopic, single-celled organisms called prokaryotes, simple cells without a nucleus. They floated in the ancient seas, feeding on organic compounds, dividing and multiplying. For billions of years, these tiny organisms were the only life on Earth, invisible to any eye that might have been watching, but already shaping the planet in profound ways. Around 2.4 billion years ago, some of these simple cells developed a revolutionary ability, photosynthesis. They learned to use sunlight to convert carbon dioxide and water into energy, releasing oxygen as a waste product. At first, this oxygen was absorbed by the iron dissolved in the oceans, creating vast deposits of rust on the seafloor. But eventually, the oceans became saturated, and oxygen began to build up in the atmosphere. This was the Great Oxidation Event, a catastrophe for many early life forms that found oxygen toxic, but an opportunity for others that could harness its power. For another billion years, life remained simple and microscopic, but beneath the surface, evolution was working. Around 1.5 billion years ago, more complex cells appeared, eukaryotes with nuclei and internal structures. These cells would eventually give rise to all plants, animals, and fungi. They were still microscopic, still invisible, but they carried within them the potential for everything that would follow. Then, around 600 million years ago, something extraordinary happened. Life became visible. The first multicellular organisms appeared in the oceans, strange, soft-bodied creatures that left their impressions in ancient mudstones. This was the Ediacaran biota, a world of frond-like organisms, disc-shaped creatures, and things so strange we have no name for them. They lived on the seafloor, filter-feeding or absorbing nutrients directly from the water. Some looked like modern jellyfish, others like worms, but most belonged to extinct groups with no living descendants. For 50 million years, these strange creatures flourished, until around 541 million years ago, when something changed. The Cambrian explosion began, one of the most dramatic events in the history of life. Over a relatively short period of time, the fossil record shows the sudden appearance of most major animal groups that exist today, along with many that have long since vanished. The oceans filled with creatures, trilobites crawling on the seafloor, anomalocarids swimming above, brachiopods attached to rocks, and the first vertebrates, small fish-like creatures with primitive backbones. Imagine diving into a Cambrian ocean. The water is warm and clear, rich in minerals. The seafloor is covered in mud, but it's not empty. Trilobites scuttle across the bottom, their segmented bodies armored and their compound eyes scanning for danger. They come in all sizes, from tiny specks to creatures as large as dinner plates. Some burrow into the mud for protection, others swim freely above the bottom. They are the dominant life form of their age, and they will remain so for nearly 300 million years. Above them, strange creatures swim through the water. Anomalocaris, the odd shrimp, is the apex predator of its time, growing up to 3 feet long with a circular mouth surrounded by sharp plates and grasping appendages in front. It hunts the trilobites, seizing them in its claws and crushing their shells. Other creatures, like Opobinia with its 5 eyes and long, flexible proboscis, probe the mud for smaller prey. Wiwaxia, covered in protective scales and spines, crawls slowly across the bottom, grazing on microbial mats. The first chordates also appear in these oceans, small eel-like creatures with a flexible rod down their backs, the precursor to backbone. They are unremarkable at first glance, small and seemingly insignificant, but they carry the seed of all future vertebrates, including us. They swim in the shallows, filter feeding or hunting tiny prey, unaware of the destiny written in their genes. Pichia is one such creature, discovered in the Burgess Shale in Canada. It looks almost like a modern lancelet, a small translucent animal that burrows in the sand. But its simple body plan, with a notochord running along its back and blocks of muscle arranged in segments, represents the basic design from which all vertebrates would evolve. Without Pichia and its relatives, there would be no fish, no amphibians, no reptiles, no dinosaurs, no birds, no mammals, no humans. Hallucigenia is another Burgess Shale oddity, so strange that when it was first discovered, scientists couldn't tell which end was up. It walked on spiny legs, with tentacles along its back, a creature that seems like something from a dream. It reminds us that evolution experiments endlessly, producing forms that we can barely imagine. Marella, a small arthropod with elegant spines, is one of the most common fossils in the Burgess Shale. It scuttled across the seafloor in vast numbers, probably feeding on organic debris. Its delicate beauty, preserved in fine detail, gives us a window into the daily life of a Cambrian seafloor community. As the Cambrian gives way to the Ordovician period, life continues to diversify. The first true fish appear, jawless creatures covered in bony plates, like the ostracoderms. They suck up food from the seafloor, armored against predators. Arandaspes and Sacabambaspes are among the earliest, their fossils found in Australia and South America. They had no jaws, no paired fins, just a simple body with a bony head shield and a tail for propulsion. Reefs built by bryozoans and stromatolites spread across shallow seas, creating complex habitats for countless smaller creatures. These reefs were different from modern coral reefs, built by different organisms, but they served the same ecological role, providing shelter and food for a diverse community of animals. Nautiloids with long, straight shells swim through the water, predators themselves, hunting trilobites and small fish. Some reached enormous sizes, with shells up to 20 feet long. These were the giant squid of their day, the largest predators in the Ordovician seas. Their relatives, the coiled nautiloids, would persist for hundreds of millions of years and survive to the present day in the form of the chambered nautilus. The Ordovician seas are warm and rich, teeming with life. Crinoids, sea lilies, wave their feathery arms from the seafloor, filter feeding on plankton. They are animals, not plants, related to starfish and sea urchins, but they look so plant-like that they were mistaken for flowers by early paleontologists. Their stems, made of stacked circular plates, are common fossils, often found in limestone. Graptolites float in colonies, their delicate branches drifting with the currents. They are extinct now, But during the Ordovician they were everywhere. They're fossils used by geologists to date rocks because they evolved so quickly and spread so widely. Each species existed for only a short time, so finding a particular graptolite tells you exactly how old the rock is. Brachiopods, lampshells, attached to rocks and each other, their shells preserving in vast numbers. They look like clams, but they're not closely related. Clams have symmetrical shells, left and right mirror images, while brachiopods have top and bottom shells that are different. In the Paleozoic era, brachiopods were far more common than clams, dominating many seafloor communities. It is a world of abundance, of life filling every available niche. But the Ordovician ends in catastrophe. A sudden ice age grips the planet, sea levels drop, and the shallow seas that harbored so much life drain away. Mass extinction follows, wiping out countless species. Yet life persists, and when the ice retreats, the oceans rebound. The Silurian period follows, and with it, the first jawed fish appear. This is a revolutionary development. Jaws evolved from gill arches, allowing fish to grasp and tear prey. They diversify rapidly, giving rise to the first sharks and bony fish. Acanthodians, the spiny sharks, are among the earliest jawed fish, covered in tiny bony scales and with spines supporting their fins. They were small, usually under a foot long, but they represent the future of vertebrate evolution. The first bony fish, the osteichthyons, also appear in the Silurian. They would eventually become the most diverse group of vertebrates, with over 30,000 species today. Their key innovation was a swim bladder, an internal gas-filled sac that allows them to control their buoyancy without constantly swimming. This freed them to hover in place, to conserve energy, to occupy new niches. Meanwhile, the first vascular plants begin colonizing the land, but the oceans remain the center of life. Cooksonia, a tiny plant with simple stems and spore-producing tips, creeps onto riverbanks and mudflats. It's only a few inches tall, but it's the beginning of a revolution that will eventually transform the planet. By the Devonian period, often called the Age of Fish, the oceans are filled with an incredible diversity of aquatic life. Armored placoderms like Dunkleosteus dominate the seas, a massive predator reaching 30 feet long, with bony plates forming a razor-sharp beak instead of teeth. It is the terror of its age, hunting anything smaller than itself. Its skull was heavily armored, but its body was more lightly built, suggesting it was an active predator capable of swift attacks. Dunkleosteus wasn't the only giant placoderm. Titanistes was even larger, possibly reaching 30 feet or more, but it was probably a filter feeder, straining plankton from the water like a modern basking shark. Its jaws were less powerful than Dunkleosteus, adapted for a very different lifestyle. Other placoderms were smaller, more specialized. Bothriolpes was a bottom dweller with a box-like head and body, its pectoral fins enclosed in bony armor. It probably rooted through sediment for food, like a modern sturgeon. It was incredibly successful, found in Devonian rocks all over the world. Sharks, already ancient even then, swim alongside these giants, their streamlined bodies perfect for pursuit. Cladoslash is one of the earliest well-known sharks, with a streamlined body and a mouth full of sharp teeth. It lacked the claspers that modern male sharks use for reproduction, suggesting it may have reproduced differently. Its fossils are so well preserved that scientists can see muscle fibers and even kidney tissue. The first lobe-finned fish appear in Devonian seas and lakes, fish with fleshy, muscular fins that would eventually evolve into limbs. These are the ancestors of all land vertebrates, and in the shallows, they begin to experiment with life outside water. Eusthenopteran is a classic example, with fins that contain bones homologous to those in the limbs of land animals. It could probably prop itself up on its fins and perhaps even make short trips on land. Lungfish develop the ability to breathe air when ponds dry up, a crucial adaptation that will be passed down to their descendants. They have lungs connected to their esophagus, allowing them to gulp air at the surface. Some modern lungfish can survive out of water for years by burrowing into mud and secreting a protective cocoon. Coelacanths, thought extinct until rediscovered in the 20th century, lurk in deep waters. They were known only from fossils until 1938. when a living coelacanth was caught off the coast of South Africa. These living fossils have changed little in hundreds of millions of years, their lobed fins moving in an alternating pattern that resembles the walking of land animals. Coral reefs expand during the Devonian, built by tabulate and rugose corals, creating vast underwater cities teeming with life. Tabulate corals formed colonies of tiny tubes, their surfaces covered with individual polyp holes. Rugose corals, or horn corals, were often solitary, with a single large polyp living in a horn-shaped skeleton. Both groups are extinct now, replaced by modern stony corals. Ammonites, relatives of the nautilus with coiled shells, appear and begin their long reign. Their shells are masterpieces of natural engineering, with intricate suture patterns where the internal septa meet the outer shell. These patterns became increasingly complex over evolutionary time, allowing paleontologists to use them to date rocks with remarkable precision. Crinoids wave from every surface, their stems forming thick deposits of limestone in some places. In the Midwest United States, entire formations are made of crinoid stems, countless millions of them piled up over millions of years. The seafloor is alive with movement, a bustling metropolis of prehistoric proportions. But again, extinction strikes. The late Devonian extinction reduces biodiversity, though life in the oceans endures and evolves. This extinction was probably caused by multiple factors: global cooling, loss of oxygen in the oceans, and possibly asteroid impacts. Whatever the cause, it reshaped marine communities, paving the way for new groups to dominate. The Carboniferous period follows, a time of vast swamp forests on land, but beneath the waves, life continues its slow transformation. Sharks diversify into strange forms, some with bizarre spines and fins. Stethocanthus had a peculiar anvil-shaped dorsal fin covered in enlarged scales, possibly used for display or defense. Falcatus had a long spine curving forward from its head, and males had a spine on their forehead that may have been used in mating battles. Crinoids reached their peak abundance, their stems forming thick deposits of limestone. Some crinoids became free-swimming, losing their stems and developing swimming fins. These feather stars still exist today, floating gracefully through the water. Foraminifera, single-celled organisms with intricate shells, multiply in the water column, their remains eventually forming the chalk of future continents. These tiny creatures, each smaller than a grain of sand, built shells of calcium carbonate that rain down on the seafloor for millions of years, creating thick deposits of pure white sediment. The white cliffs of Dover are made of foraminifera shells. By the Permian period, the oceans have changed again. Reefs built by sponges and algae thrive in warm, shallow seas. The last of the trilobites still crawl on the seafloor, but they are shadows of their former selves, reduced to a few genera after hundreds of millions of years of dominance. Ammonites continue to evolve, their shells becoming more complex. Goniotites, with their simple lobed sutures, give way to ceratites and finally to ammonites proper, with the intricate suture patterns that define the group. They are everywhere, from surface waters to deep seas, filling every niche. The first marine reptiles appear, small and unobtrusive, but carrying the seed of future dominance. Mesosaurus, a small, long-snouted reptile with needle-like teeth, lived in freshwater lakes and coastal lagoons. It was fully aquatic, with webbed feet and a long tail for swimming, but it still came onto land to lay eggs. It seems like a time of stability, of slow and steady progress. But the Permian ends with the greatest catastrophe life has ever faced. Around 252 million years ago, massive volcanic eruptions in Siberia pour carbon dioxide and other gases into the atmosphere. The eruptions lasted for millions of years, covering an area the size of Europe with lava. The gases they released triggered runaway global warming, acidified the oceans, and depleted oxygen from the seas. 96% of all marine species vanish. Trilobites, which had survived for nearly 300 million years, finally disappear. The last of them, tiny relics of a once great group, crawl on the seafloor for the final time, then vanish forever. Corals disappear almost entirely, their reefs crumbling into rubble. It would take millions of years for new reefs to form. Ammonites are devastated, only a few lineages surviving. Brachiopods, once so common, are reduced to a handful of species. The oceans become almost empty. For millions of years, life struggles to recover. The early Triassic seas are impoverished, dominated by hardy survivors like bivalves and small ammonites. It is a world waiting to be repopulated, waiting for the next great radiation. And it comes. The Mesozoic era, the age of reptiles, sees life in the oceans explode once more. New marine reptiles evolve to fill the empty niches. Ichthyosaurs, dolphin-like reptiles with streamlined bodies and huge eyes, hunt fish and squid in the open ocean. They are superbly adapted, some reaching enormous sizes, with the largest rivaling modern whales. Ichthyosaurs evolved from land reptiles that returned to the sea, and their transformation was remarkable. Their limbs became flippers, their bodies became streamlined, their tails developed a fin. They gave birth to live young in the water, never needing to return to land. Fossils have been found of mothers with embryos inside, giving us a window into their reproduction. Shonosaurus, from the Triassic of Nevada, reached over 50 feet long, making it one of the largest marine reptiles of all time. It had a long, slender body and small teeth, suggesting it fed on squid and fish. Its bones are so numerous in some areas that paleontologists have found entire bone beds, mass death assemblages that may represent entire pods dying together. Temnodontosaurus, from the Jurassic of Europe, had enormous eyes, over 8 inches across, the largest of any vertebrate ever. It probably hunted in deep or murky water, using its huge eyes to spot prey in the dim light. Its streamlined body and powerful tail made it a fast, efficient predator. Plesiosaurs evolve a different body plan, with long necks and small heads, their 4 flippers powering them through the water. They are ambush predators, using their flexible necks to strike at prey. Some plesiosaurs have necks longer than their bodies, a snake-like head on a turtle-like body. Elasmosaurus is the classic long-necked plesiosaur, with over 70 vertebrae in its neck. It could twist and turn its head in ways no modern animal can, reaching into schools of fish or around obstacles. It probably swam slowly, using its long neck to sneak up on prey before striking. Cryptoclidus, a smaller plesiosaur with a shorter neck, had interlocking teeth that formed a cage for trapping small fish and shrimp. It may have swum through schools of prey, snapping its jaws shut to trap anything inside. Its fossils are common in the Oxford clay of England, a rich Jurassic deposit. Other plesiosaurs, the pliosaurs, have short necks and massive heads, apex predators of their age. Leopleurodon, made famous by walking with dinosaurs, was a large pliosaur with powerful jaws and teeth the size of bananas. It was the lion of the Jurassic seas, hunting anything it could catch. Kronosaurus, from the Cretaceous of Australia, was even larger, with a skull over 9 feet long. Its teeth were conical and sharp, designed for gripping and tearing flesh. It probably fed on other marine reptiles, sea turtles and large fish, the top predator of its ecosystem. The seas of the Jurassic and Cretaceous are warm and rich, with coral reefs expanding once more. Ammonites reach their peak diversity, their shells evolving into incredible shapes, some tightly coiled, some loosely coiled, some straight, some with elaborate ribs and spines. They are everywhere, from surface waters to deep seas, filling the roles that snails and squid do today. Some ammonites evolved shells that were partially uncoiled, like a loose spiral. Others, like the heteromorphs, abandoned coiling altogether, growing in strange, twisted shapes. These bizarre forms may have been adapted to specific lifestyles, perhaps floating among seaweed or lying on the seafloor. Belemnites, relatives of squid with internal shells, swim in vast schools, hunted by ichthyosaurs and fish. Their bullet-shaped shells, called guards, are common fossils, often found concentrated in deposits where they accumulated after death. They had 10 arms with hooks for grasping prey and ink sacs like modern squid. The first true bony fish diversify, many recognizable as ancestors of modern groups. Leptalpes, a small herring-like fish, swam in vast schools, their silvery bodies flashing in the sun. They were prey for almost everything larger, but their numbers ensured their survival. Giant filter feeders like leadsichthys, a massive fish that could reach 50 feet, strain plankton from the water. It was a pachycormid, a group of bony fish that included both giant filter feeders and fast predators. Leedsitches had a huge mouth and fine gill rakers for trapping plankton, swimming slowly through rich waters with its mouth open. The seafloor is alive with new life forms. Heart urchins burrow in the sediment, their spines adapted for digging. They are irregular echinoids, related to sand dollars, and they move through the sediment using special tube feet. Their fossils are often found in the positions where they died, still buried in the sediment they once crawled through. Starfish and brittle stars crawl across the bottom, their arms reaching for prey. They are echinoderms, like crinoids and sea urchins, with a 5-part symmetry that sets them apart from almost all other animals. Their skeletons are made of many small plates, and they can regenerate lost arms. Crabs and lobsters scuttle among the rocks, their modern forms already recognizable. They are decapod crustaceans, with 10 legs and a hard exoskeleton. Their fossils are rarer than some groups because their shells fall apart after molting, but when preserved they show incredible detail. And in the late Cretaceous, the most fearsome marine reptiles of all appear. Mosasaurs, giant lizards related to modern monitor lizards, evolved from small coastal ancestors into enormous open ocean predators. They reach lengths of 50 feet or more, with powerful jaws and streamlined bodies. They are the apex predators of their age, hunting anything they can catch, from fish and ammonites to sea turtles and even other marine reptiles. Mosasaurus hoffmanni, the type species, was one of the largest, with a skull over 5 feet long. Its jaws were lined with sharp, conical teeth, and it could swallow prey whole by unhinging its lower jaw like a snake. It probably hunted in open water, using its powerful tail for propulsion. Tylosaurus, another giant mosasaur, had a long, cylindrical snout that it may have used to ram prey. Its fossils have been found with stomach contents including other mosasaurs, plesiosaurs, and fish. It was a voracious predator, the terror of the late Cretaceous seas. Haenosaurus, similar to Tylosaurus, was one of the longest mosasaurs, reaching perhaps 50 feet. It had a relatively shorter snout and larger flippers, perhaps adapted for different prey or hunting techniques. Its remains are found in Europe and North America. Platecarpus was a smaller, more lightly built mosasaur, probably a fast swimmer that chased smaller prey. Its teeth were more slender than those of the giants, adapted for gripping rather than tearing. It was one of the most common mosasaurs, known from many complete skeletons. They are the culmination of marine reptile evolution, perfectly adapted to life in the water. But their reign will not last. Alongside the mosasaurs, giant sea turtles like Archelon and Protostega paddle through the warm Cretaceous seas. Archelon was the largest turtle ever, reaching over 15 feet long from snout to tail. It had a leathery shell rather than a hard one, making it lighter and more streamlined. It probably fed on jellyfish and soft-bodied prey, using its powerful beak to crush and tear. Protostega was nearly as large, with a similar body plan. Its fossils are found in the western interior seaway of North America, along with mosasaurs, plesiosaurs, and countless fish. These giant turtles were common in the late Cretaceous, but they too would vanish in the coming extinction. Hesperornis, a flightless seabird with teeth, swims through the shallows, chasing fish with its powerful legs. It looked like a modern loon or grebe, but with a beak full of sharp teeth for gripping slippery prey. It was fully aquatic, probably coming ashore only to nest and lay eggs. Ichthyornis, another toothed seabird, was more like a modern gull, with well-developed wings for flight. Its teeth were small and sharp, adapted for catching fish. Both birds show that by the late Cretaceous, birds had already diversified into many ecological niches. 66 million years ago, a massive asteroid strikes the Earth, triggering the fifth great extinction. The impact sends shockwaves around the planet, followed by darkness, cold, and acid rain. The dinosaurs disappear, and with them, the marine reptiles, the ammonites, the belemnites, countless species vanish from the oceans. The asteroid, 6 miles wide, struck what is now the Yucatan Peninsula in Mexico. The impact crater, Chicxulub, is over 100 miles across. The initial blast was equivalent to billions of atomic bombs, sending vaporized rock and sulfur into the atmosphere. Global wildfires raged, tsunamis swept coastlines, and earthquakes shook the planet. Then came the darkness. Dust and soot blocked the sun for months or years, preventing photosynthesis and collapsing food chains. The oceans turned acid, dissolving the shells of plankton and reef builders. Temperatures plummeted, then soared as greenhouse gases built up. The climate swung wildly, making survival impossible for most large animals. When the dust finally settled, the world was empty, waiting for new life to emerge. But again, life endures. The survivors, small fish, sharks, and other creatures, inherit the empty seas. In the millennia that follow, they diversify once more, filling the niches left vacant. The age of mammals begins, and eventually mammals will return to the oceans, giving rise to whales, dolphins, seals, and manatees. The story of prehistoric oceans is the story of life itself. It is a story of endless experimentation, of forms that appear and vanish, of radiations and extinctions, of survival against impossible odds. It is a story written in stone, in the fossils that paleontologists carefully extract from ancient seafloors now uplifted into mountains and deserts. Consider the trilobites, which dominated for 300 million years. They evolved incredible variety, some spiny, some smooth, some with enormous eyes, some blind. They adapted to every marine environment, from shallow reefs to deep abyssal plains. And then they vanished, their entire lineage ending forever. Yet we can still hold their fossils, trace their intricate details, imagine them crawling across ancient mud. Consider the ammonites, which evolved and diversified for over 300 million years, surviving multiple extinctions, only to perish in the final catastrophe. Their spiral shells, preserved by the millions, are among the most beautiful of all fossils. Each one a perfect logarithmic spiral, a testament to the mathematics inherent in life. Consider the ichthyosaurs, which evolved from land reptiles returning to the sea. They converged so perfectly on dolphin form that it's sometimes difficult to tell their fossils apart from modern dolphins at a glance. Yet they lived 100 million years before the first whales. Evolution found the same solution twice: streamlined body, dorsal fin, flippers, because water demands certain shapes for fast swimming. Consider the plesiosaurs, with their impossibly long necks. Some had over 70 vertebrae in their necks, allowing them to twist and turn in ways no modern animal can. They were the giraffes of the sea, reaching into schools of fish with their small heads on the end of those flexible necks. Consider the mosasaurs, which evolved from tiny lizards into 50-foot monsters in just a few million years. Their jaws could unhinge like a snake's, allowing them to swallow prey whole. They were the last great marine reptiles, the final experiment before the asteroid ended their world. Consider the giant sea turtles, Archelon and Protostega, paddling through warm Cretaceous seas. They were the largest turtles that ever lived, their flippers spanning 15 feet or more. They saw the rise of mosasaurs, the decline of ammonites, the whole pageant of late Cretaceous life, and then they too were gone. And consider the tiny, the invisible, the things that don't preserve as fossils. The plankton that formed the base of every food chain, the bacteria that cycled nutrients, the soft-bodied creatures that left no trace. They were there too, in countless numbers, supporting the entire ecosystem. Without them, nothing else could have existed. The prehistoric oceans were not static. They changed with the planet, their chemistry shifting, their temperatures rising and falling, their currents reorganizing as continents drifted. When the continents were together, as in the supercontinent Pangaea, the oceans were different, with different circulation patterns and different life distributions. When they split apart, new seaways opened, creating opportunities for migration and isolation. The Tethys Ocean, which separated the northern continents from the southern ones, was a tropical seaway teeming with life. It stretched from what is now the Caribbean through the Mediterranean to Asia, a warm, shallow sea that served as a center of evolution for countless groups. Its closure, as Africa and India collided with Eurasia, helped drive the final extinction of many ancient lineages. The Panthalassic Ocean, the vast global ocean that surrounded Pangaea, was the largest ocean that ever existed. It covered more than half the planet, a deep, open ocean that was home to pelagic creatures like ichthyosaurs and ammonites. Its remnants became the Pacific, but most of it has been subducted, lost forever beneath the continents. The western interior seaway split North America in two during the Cretaceous, a warm, shallow sea stretching from the Arctic to the Gulf of Mexico. Its waters teemed with life: mosasaurs, plesiosaurs, giant turtles, sharks, and fish, all leaving their bones in the chalk that formed from countless microscopic plankton. Today, those same beds are exposed in the Badlands of Kansas and Nebraska, yielding spectacular fossils. Other seaways, like the Sundance Sea that covered parts of the western United States during the Jurassic, left their own fossil records. The Sundance Sea was home to ichthyosaurs and plesiosaurs, as well as abundant invertebrates like belemnites and ammonites. Its sediments now form the beautiful red rocks of the Colorado Plateau. The deep oceans remained mysterious throughout most of Earth's history. Without light, without oxygen in many periods, they were places of strange adaptations. Hydrothermal vent communities, discovered only in the 1970s, showed that life could thrive in complete darkness, fueled not by sunlight, but by chemicals from the Earth's interior. Similar communities likely existed throughout the history of life, refuges during times of surface catastrophe. Cold seeps, where methane and other chemicals seep from the seafloor, also supported unique communities. Ancient versions of these, with distinctive fossils, show that such ecosystems have existed for hundreds of millions of years. The creatures that lived there, tube worms, clams, and other specialists, evolved in isolation, adapting to a world without sun. The first life was small, but it shaped the planet. Stromatolites, layered structures built by microbial mats, appear in the fossil record over 3 billion years ago. For most of Earth's history, these microbial communities were the only life, slowly but profoundly changing the atmosphere and oceans. They still exist today in a few places, like Shark Bay in Australia, living relics of an ancient world. The evolution of hard parts, shells and skeletons, around 540 million years ago, transformed the fossil record. For the first time, organisms could leave clear, recognizable remains. The Cambrian explosion, whatever triggered it, gave us the first shelly fossils, the first complex ecosystems we can easily study. But it wasn't really an explosion. It was more of a slow radiation spread over millions of years. But soft-bodied fossils, preserved in special conditions like the Burgess Shale in Canada or the Chengjiang deposits in China, show us even more. They reveal the full diversity of early life, the strange experiments that didn't survive, the body plans that came and went. The Burgess Shale animals, with their weird anatomy, remind us that evolution explores many paths, most of which lead nowhere. The Chengjiang biota from China is even older than the Burgess Shale. It preserves an incredible array of soft-bodied creatures, many of which are still being studied and named. New species are discovered every year, each one adding to our understanding of early animal evolution. The first vertebrates, our own distant ancestors, were small fish-like creatures in Cambrian seas. They had no jaws, no paired fins, just a simple body with a notochord for support. From these humble beginnings came all fish, all amphibians, all reptiles, all birds, all mammals, including us. Miloconmingia from the Chengjiang biota is one of the earliest known vertebrates. It was tiny, only an inch long, with a simple body and a notochord running down its back. It probably filter-fed, sucking up small particles from the water. It didn't know it, but it was the ancestor of everything with a backbone. The transition from jawless to jawed fish was one of the most important events in vertebrate evolution. Jaws allowed new ways of feeding, predation, scavenging, crushing shells. The first jawed fish, the placoderms, evolved into a remarkable diversity of forms, culminating in giants like Dunkleosteus. The evolution of teeth, which came from scales that migrated into the mouth, allowed for even more specialized feeding. Different teeth for different foods, cutting, crushing, grinding. This flexibility would prove enormously successful, allowing vertebrates to exploit almost every food source on the planet. Sharks, once they evolved, proved incredibly successful and durable. They've survived every mass extinction, adapting and diversifying, always present in the oceans. Their basic design, streamlined, powerful, efficient, has served them well for over 400 million years. They've changed, of course, but the fundamental body plan remains the same. Bony fish, which evolved later, became even more diverse. Today, there are more species of bony fish than all other vertebrates combined. They fill every aquatic niche, from mountain streams to ocean depths, from tropical reefs to polar seas. Their success lies in their versatility, their ability to adapt to almost any environment. The evolution of land plants changed the oceans too. As forests spread across the continents, nutrients washed into the seas, fertilizing coastal waters and fueling blooms of plankton. The carbon cycle shifted, affecting climate and ocean chemistry. Roots broke up rocks, releasing minerals that eventually reached the sea. The great extinctions, the Big Five, punctuate the history of life. Each one reset the evolutionary clock, wiping out dominant groups and opening opportunities for survivors. Without the Permian extinction, dinosaurs might never have risen to prominence. Without the Cretaceous extinction, mammals might still be small, nocturnal creatures scurrying beneath the feet of reptiles. The Endordovian extinction, the first of the Big Five, was caused by a rapid ice age that drained shallow seas and killed off countless species. It was followed by a rapid warming that finished off the survivors. Reef builders were hit hard, and it took millions of years for reefs to recover. The late Devonian extinction, the second Big Five, was actually a series of extinctions spread over millions of years. It hit reefs particularly hard, along with many fish groups. The placoderms never recovered, and the lobe-finned fish, our own ancestors, were reduced to a shadow of their former diversity. The end-Permian extinction, the Great Dying, was by far the worst. It came close to ending life entirely. The causes, massive volcanism, runaway greenhouse, ocean acidification, anoxia, combined to create a perfect storm that almost no life could withstand. The recovery took millions of years, and the ecosystems that emerged were fundamentally different from those that came before. The End-Triassic extinction, the fourth Big Five, was another volcanic event triggered by the breakup of Pangaea. It cleared the way for dinosaurs to dominate the Jurassic, but it also wiped out many marine groups, including the last of the conodonts, an important group of early vertebrates. The End Cretaceous extinction, the most famous, ended the reign of dinosaurs and marine reptiles. It was sudden, catastrophic, and final. But it also opened the door for mammals, and eventually for us. We are here because of extinction. Every mass extinction that cleared the way, every survivor that carried the torch of life forward, led eventually to us. The chain of life was broken again and again, but never completely. Enough always remained to rebuild. The fossils we find today are just a tiny sample of all the life that ever existed. Most organisms never fossilize. Most fossils have been destroyed by erosion or metamorphism. Most that remain are buried, inaccessible. We're working with fragments, glimpses, hints of an unimaginably vast history. Yet those fragments tell an incredible story. They show us trilobites crawling across Ordovician seafloors, ammonites swimming in Jurassic seas, ichthyosaurs hunting in Cretaceous waters. They show us the first fish, the first reefs, the first predators, the first filter feeders. They show us a world that was alien and yet familiar, strange and yet connected to us by an unbroken chain of life. When you hold a fossil shell, you're holding something that lived and died millions of years ago. That creature breathed, ate, reproduced, had its own life and place in its ecosystem. It was part of a world we can only imagine, a world of warm, shallow seas and strange creatures, of predators and prey, of life and death and evolution. That world is gone, but it's not forgotten. Every time a paleontologist splits a rock and finds a fossil, a little piece of that world returns. Every time we study ancient rocks and reconstruct ancient environments, we bring that world back into focus. The prehistoric oceans still exist, in a sense, preserved in stone, waiting for us to discover them. And as we drift towards sleep, let our minds wander through those ancient waters. Imagine floating above a Cambrian reef, watching trilobites crawl below and anomalocarids swim past. The water is warm and clear, the sun filtering down from above, casting shifting patterns on the seafloor. Imagine diving into a Devonian sea, surrounded by armored fish and giant placoderms. Dunkleosteus cruises in the distance, a massive predator, but it ignores you, focused on its own prey. Smaller fish scatter as it passes, their scales flashing. Imagine swimming with ichthyosaurs in the Jurassic, watching them chase belemnites through sunlit waters. They twist and turn with effortless grace, their streamlined bodies perfectly adapted for speed. A mother and calf swim together, the youngster learning to hunt. Imagine drifting above a Cretaceous reef, with mosasaurs hunting in the distance and ammonites rising and falling in the water column. The reef below is alive with color, fish darting among the corals, crinoids waving their arms, starfish crawling slowly across the rocks. These are not just fantasies. These are real places, real times, real worlds that existed on this planet we call home. The water has long since changed. The continents have drifted. The life has evolved into new forms, but the connection remains. The atoms in our bodies were once in those ancient seas, cycled through countless generations of organisms, passed from one life to another across billions of years. We are, in a very real sense, children of those prehistoric oceans. The salt in our blood, the calcium in our bones, the very chemistry of our cells all bear the signature of the sea. We carry the ocean within us, a reminder of where life began and how deeply we're connected to that ancient world. The first life emerged in the sea, and for most of Earth's history, the sea was the only home life had. Every major group of animals, every body plan, every evolutionary innovation first appeared in the ocean. Land was a later conquest, a secondary adaptation. We are fundamentally creatures of the sea who learn to live elsewhere. So rest now, carried by the gentle currents of deep time. Let your thoughts drift like plankton in a Cambrian sea. Let your mind float through the ages, past the trilobites and the ammonites, past the ichthyosaurs and the mosasaurs, back to the very beginning when life first stirred in the warm, mineral-rich waters of a young Earth. The oceans are still there, covering most of our planet. They've changed, but they're still full of life, still full of mystery. And beneath the waves, in the rocks and sediments, the story of those ancient seas waits to be told. Layer by layer, fossil by fossil, we piece it together, a story without end, a story that includes us all. The prehistoric oceans remind us that life is resilient, that it persists through catastrophe, that it finds a way. They remind us that we are part of something vast and ancient, a story that began billions of years ago and continues today in every living thing. Sleep well, and let the ancient seas carry you gently into rest. The tide of time flows on, and we float upon it, tiny specks in an immense ocean of existence, but connected to everything that ever lived. The water is warm. The current is gentle. And somewhere, far below, the fossils rest in their stone beds, waiting for the next wave of discovery. Let them wait. Tonight we drift. The first life was small, but it dreamed of becoming us. Not consciously, of course, but in the way that evolution dreams, through countless generations, through endless experiments, through survival and extinction and survival again. The dream took billions of years to fulfill, but here we are, the dreamers and the dreamed. And as you drift towards sleep, remember that you are part of that dream. The atoms in your body were once in those ancient seas. The genes that shape you were tested in those primordial waters. The life that flows through you is the same life that first stirred in the depths billions of years ago. There is comfort in that, a sense of belonging, of being part of something larger than yourself. You are not alone. You are connected to every creature that ever lived, to every wave that ever washed a prehistoric shore, to every cell that ever divided in the warm, ancient sea. So rest now, and let the ocean hold you. Let the rhythm of the waves, imagined or remembered, carry you into sleep. Let the ancient waters embrace you as they embraced the first life so long ago.